Hello, and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be reading a discussion thread about the first episode of House of the Dragon, which is a prequel to Game of Thrones. So for those of you who have not seen the episode yet, it did just premiere. You may not want to listen as it will definitely contain some spoilers. But before I get into the discussion thread, I am just gonna read the wiki just to share the plot and backstory of the show. Although if you've already seen it, I'm sure this is stuff you already know. So with that, sit back, relax, and let's get started. House of the Dragon, also marketed as Game of Thrones House of the Dragon, is a Game of Thrones prequel series. It was ordered by HBO in October 2019. The prequel goes back approximately 200 years to center on the beginning of the end of the once all-powerful dynasty that dominated the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. The concept for House of the Dragon was first pitched by George R.R. Martin in the summer of 2016 with the working title The Dance of the Dragons. It was initially helmed by Carly Ray and then by Brian Cogman and finally Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik. With the launch of HBO Max in May 2020, the House of the Dragon prequel is based on Martin's best-selling Fire and Blood. The title of the show derives from a passage from A Game of Thrones Chapter 3, Daenerys. The water was scalding hot, but Daenerys did not flinch or cry out. She liked the heat. It made her feel clean. Besides, her brother had often told her that it was never too hot for a Targaryen. Ours is the House of the Dragon, he would say. The fire is in our blood. The prequel series finds the Targaryen dynasty at the absolute apex of its power, with more than 15 dragons under their yoke. Most empires, real and imagined, crumbled from such heights. In the case of the Targaryens, their slow fall begins almost 193 years before the events of Game of Thrones, when King Viserys Targaryen breaks with a century of tradition by naming his daughter Rhaenyra heir to the Iron Throne. But when Viserys later fathers a son, the court is shocked when Rhaenyra retains her status as his heir, and seeds of division saw friction across the realm. So that was just a little background of the show and the plot. So with that, I am going to get into the episode discussion hub for the first episode, The Heirs of the Dragon. The costume design in the first episode is incredible. Otto Hightower being so willing to sell his daughter off like that, shaking my head, so sick. The gold cloaks under Prince Daemon give me really strong militant cult vibes. Going to be really interesting to see how far they'll enforce the law. The juxtaposition between how violently gruesome the night's jousting became while the princess and the lord discuss everyone's lust for blood because they haven't experienced war felt like some dark foreshadowing. King Viserys choosing to have his dying wife go through a painful C-section without her consent, only to lose their newborn son, was truly horrific. So many conflicting characters in the first episode. This episode felt like classic Game of Thrones. Conflicting character growth, a steady plotline, meaningful violence used as a plot device, different factions vying for power. I'm hooked. Matt Smith as Daemon is amazing. Excited to see his character throughout the show, but by golly, those dragons are amazing. Rhaenyra's version of Dracarys sounded so crisp and powerful. I like how Otto Hightower was already sliding his daughter right into the line of succession. Was waiting to see who would make the first Littlefinger type move. I love his voice. Get real Tywin vibes from him. Daemon is amazing. Matt Smith is killing it. Totally nailed him. I mostly think all the actors are fantastic, but Matt Smith is in another league. 174 years before Daenerys Targaryen was more impactful than it should have been. I'm assuming that was just to make it super clear to more casual viewers that no one from Game of Thrones is alive yet, and this is set way before it. I think it doesn't help that Rhaenyra looked like she could be a young Dany. Seeing the king sacrifice his wife for his unborn son, only to have unborn son and wife die, made me sick and angry. Welcome back, Game of Thrones. Important point. It's stated beforehand that the only option is that both die or just his wife. He didn't murder his wife like some people are accusing. However, she should have been given the choice to consent to it. That, to me, is what was so wrong about what he did. He knew her well, and in her few scenes before she died, it was made clear that she almost certainly would have consented so that her son would live. Viserys and his little hobby of making a model of Dragonstone like an old man and his trains was surprisingly cute. I love how they kept switching between the tourney and the labor. Despite both being bloody, the parts that made me close my eyes and squeamish were the labor parts, while perfectly being able to watch the tourney. Did anyone else notice the flayed man shield at the tournament? In the behind the episode thing after, they said they brought that up specifically to make it tie a bit into the later events and add a bit of dark irony to the proceedings. He speaks to Rhaenyra as if she's the one who will face the long winter, and that's part of why he's picking her. But we know that those events won't come until many years after everyone involved in the show is dead. That was one of the best openers to a series I've seen in a long time. Everything about it was amazing. I love how they really sell that things were better under the Targaryens at this point in time. The tournament is especially a good selling point, with the stadium looking grand and well crafted compared to Robert's tournament, where the stands are made of wood. Yes, the city looks cleaner and brighter, and overall, people look better and healthier, although that might just be the costume and makeup design being different for this series. Not looking good for Viserys. Loved the callback to the original series with the blade that sparked the North's rebellion. That flyover shot of King's Landing in the beginning felt like coming home after a long vacation. Something I really appreciated was how King's Landing felt much more formal. The clothing, armor, and decor, most notably the Iron Throne, were more elaborate and brighter than Game of Thrones. It's clear this is a kingdom in its heyday when a relatively weak king can rule for a decade. This made me remember how it felt watching Game of Thrones. I can't explain it, but I missed the feeling. Random assorted thoughts. If this show becomes a success in any way, shape, or form, Matt Smith is getting at least an Emmy nomination. Some good show, don't tell world building in this. The people of King's Landing just going about their business as dragons fly above them. There are some extremely uncomfortable scenes in this episode, but I'd say they fit with the story and what they were trying to say. They talk about how dragons are a power that man should never have trifled, which really leans into the dragons equals nukes metaphor. I enjoyed this episode more than I expected and can't wait for next week. I think the king is being manipulated. I think Daemon was right about him being weak, and he's especially vulnerable given recent events. He lost his wife, only son, and now they are turning him and Daemon against each other. We didn't actually hear Daemon say the heir for one day line. We did, however, see Viserys have his wife killed. Daemon is already such an interesting character. He's quite the jerk, but he means well with his actions. Daemon putting a necklace on her gave me the creepy vibes and made sure that I was indeed watching a show set in Game of Thrones universe. I had no doubt after that. Really great episode in my opinion. I think this is the return to the earlier Game of Thrones style that a lot of us were hoping for. A couple of thoughts. Biggest highlight, the entire ending. The score was incredible. Young Rhaenyra's actor knocked it out of the park, and the Daemon-Viserys confrontation was excellent. Biggest lowlight, the tourney. Not a fan personally of all the quick cuts, and the excessive gore went far beyond what would actually make sense for a tourney. I could kind of see it working as a way of showing that after so much peace, people are growing bloodthirsty, but I would have liked something to establish that such violence is incredibly out of the norm then. Ultimately, the numerous highs were a lot higher than the one or two lows, so overall I think this was a great first showing. Looking forward to seeing how things go over this season. I thought the premiere was excellent. felt like a huge return to form. The production values off the chart, incredible cinematography and set design. This really felt like the older seasons of Game of Thrones. I really missed the palace intrigue, and I'm so happy to see it back again. Plus, we were given some amazing performances and just very sharp dialogue. That's what really stood out, just how great and authentic the dialogue felt. Speech about the long night doesn't hit as hard as it should, since the way it ended up playing out was pretty disappointing. I was sort of tentative about re-entering this world, but I really enjoyed that. I thought that it felt very grounded in character while still accomplishing a great sense of scale. The world felt very lived in to me, and the new Iron Throne is a huge upgrade. Paddy was the standout for me, and I thought he carried the emotional weight of this episode. I'll miss him a lot if he gets Ned Starked. I thought Matt Smith bore the Targaryen madness quite well too. I thought it was interesting that they brought up the threat of the Long Night. I guess that's integral to this whole story as written by Martin, but I don't know how you reintroduce that threat with a sense of stakes after the whole world watched it fall flat in Game of Thrones. I'm curious to see how they handle that. I noticed this while watching. The king mentions his dream, seeing his son born with an iron crown, and I pointed out to my fiancé, in a way, he was right. For those who don't know, babies are usually born upside down, that is, they come out head first. A breeched baby is usually right side up, so when a C-section is performed on a breeched baby, it's not uncommon to locate the head as the first part of the baby in the womb. In this case, the iron crown was the scalpel. Yes, today's scalpels are steel, but if you looked closely, the scalpel they used had a more grayish tone, like the Iron Throne. So the baby was born with an iron crown. Just thought I'd throw that out there. That was great. It really felt like season 1 through 4 Game of Thrones. I think Daemon and the king's daughter will somehow be the king and queen. Love the connection to the books where the Iron Throne was always cutting the kings who sat on it. Fantastic opening episode. Peak Thrones. Dialogue was pretty good too. Really high hopes for the season now. They set up the building tension between each faction brilliantly, and the introduction to each character was done perfectly. Can't wait for the next one. Okay, so I think I am going to go ahead and stop there as the comments are starting to get a little repetitive, but hopefully you enjoyed hearing other people's thoughts on the episode. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful night, a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.